Mhm. Heather, do you know if um, Daniel's going to be staying Friday night or going back home Friday night?
I'm not sure. I can check though.
And is he in Nanaimo?
No, Qualcomm.
Qualicum. Okay.
Hi, John.
Yeah.
Good morning. Hi. Can you hear me?
Yes, can hear you,
Okay,
can see you.
great.
Okay. It says your bandwidth is low, so you may want to turn off your camera.
Oh, strange. Okay, I will do that.
Okay. Okay, well, I think we'll get started. I think the other Bob will join us in a couple minutes here. Um, but I'll call the Bamfield Area Services Committee meeting to order at 6:05 p.m. And I would like to acknowledge that the meeting is being held on the Inuit territories. I will advise that this meeting is being recorded and live streamed through YouTube to the Regional District website. And we'll start off with introductions. So I'm Heather Zenner, Manager of Administrative Services. And next we'll go over to Mariah and then Lisa.
Good evening, everyone. Luf Klama Mariah Coots, representative for the Hochakasa Tribe Government. Happy to see you all. Klako Chu.
Hello, my name is Lisa Bai, and I am a community volunteer and have been a resident of Bamfield since 2013.
Great. Thank you. Bob Beckett, followed by John Mass.
Hi, I'm Bob Beckett. I'm the Regional Director representing Bamfield Area A. Good evening, everyone.
Thank you. John?
Hi there. Yeah, John Mass here, chair of the APC and Bamfield resident for 30 years. And yeah, I used to be on the water board. I guess that's why I'm here.
Perfect. Thank you. Michael?
Hi, everyone. Michael McGregor, Lands and Resources Coordinator for the CRD.
Great. Thank you, Michael. Eddie?
Hi, everybody. Eddie Kunderman, Operations Manager with the ACRD.
Great. Thank you, Eddie. And Mandy, do you want to introduce yourself?
Hi, I'm Mandy Ross. I run the Human Wildlife Conflict Reduction Program, or Bear Aware program in Bamfield.
Perfect. Thanks, Mandy. We're just going to do elections quickly, and then we'll turn it over to you for your presentation. So as this is the first meeting of the year, we will do elections. So we're looking for a chair of the committee, and it needs to be one of the ACRD directors. So either Bob Beckett, Mariah Coots, or John Jack. So I'll let the two of you duke it out for chair.
If Bob is willing, I would be more than happy to support Bob taking the lead chair position.
Okay, Bob, that sounds like a nomination. Do you accept it?
Um, I do with the caveat being that if I was to accept it, and would Director Coots be prepared to be vice chair?
I would be willing to accept that nomination, Bob. Thank you.
And I'd be happy to take that on.
Okay, well then I will declare Director Beckett as chair and Director Coots as vice chair. So Director Beckett, I will hand it over to you and then we'll carry on with approval of agenda.
Excellent. Just bear with me 1 second because I just got hold of Bob. So Bob's trying to get on. He says, I haven't tried again yet. Assume Heather would give us new instructions or link. Let me just take 1 second and I'll text him back, say, try original link, please.
Thank you. And Mandy, do you want me to share your presentation when we get there, or do you want to do it?
I'll try and see if
Yep.
the computer likes me today.
Okay, sounds good.
So I've just texted Bob, and if Mandy, you don't mind, we'll just hold on for just one moment and see if we can get Bob, please, because he lives on Cougar Alley, as I do. So it'd be good to have him listening in. I suppose we could. We'll just go to approval of the agenda, which is item number 3. So if I could have a motion to approve the agenda, please. Lisa makes that motion, seconded by Moira. All in favor? No one opposed. Thank you very much.
Yep.
Declarations. Any conflict of interest? Any declarations? Seeing and hearing none, we will move on to minutes. Item number 5, Bamfield Area Services Committee meeting held October 15th, 2024. And I'm looking for someone to make the motion that the minutes of the Bamfield Area Services Committee meeting held on October 15th, 2024 be adopted. And moved by Moira, seconded by Bob. Any discussion, any comments, any errors or omission? That being the case, all in favor? And that's passed and moved. And I just want to check with Heather and all of you. Is it okay if we're somewhat informal here? First names, do we need to, is that all right with everyone? We just carry on with that? I'm seeing everyone either yes, thumbs up, so we'll just carry on that way then. The next set of minutes is the Bamfield Parks Commission meeting held February 6, 2025. Looking for a motion that the minutes of the Bamfield Parks Commission meeting held on February 6, 2025 be received. Could someone please, that's Lisa, makes that motion, seconded by John Mass. Any comments, questions, errors, or omissions? Go ahead, Lisa.
Just the one comment made regarding the Smiley Rink concrete pad and perhaps the necessity for only one basketball hoop. I would just like to put that comment out to Parks that when we have the students here from BMSC, there's often enough to create teams to play a game, which would require a hoop on either end of the field. Not knowing how often that happens or not, but that was the only thing I noticed.
Thank you for that, Lisa. Heather, how are we going to address that response back from Lisa? Gets captured in the minutes of this meeting and referred back to Parks? Yeah, we can just refer it back through the Parks Commission through Michael. Perfect. Thank you. Thank you, Michael, for that. Thank you for that, Lisa. Hearing there's nothing else, or seeing there's nothing else, all in favor of those minutes being passed? And that passes. Thank you very much. Item number 6 is petitions, delegations, and presentations. Typically, Mandy, we allow 10 minutes for a presentation. If it exceeds 10 minutes, I'll let you know, and then we can come back to the committee and see whether or not there's an appetite to continue. As I said, it's relatively informal. I'm sure that we'll be riveted watching the presentation, and if it does go over 10 minutes, I'm sure we can accommodate that. So I'd like to welcome you. I know that you're no stranger to everyone, but if you wouldn't mind, just a quick introduction about yourself and your presentation tonight, and then I'll turn it over to you.
Thanks, Bob. Is that me now? Awesome, thanks. My name's Mandy Ross, and I'm a part-time resident of Bamfield, and I've been running this program for over 10 years now, trying to educate the public about dealing with attractants and trying to prevent human-wildlife conflict. Yeah, so that's sort of I live in Victoria, and so a lot of the stuff is done back and forth. So, but I'm there full time in the summers. Um, so that's me. Should I try sharing my thing here? Let's see. Um, I, is this part of the 10 minutes?
No.
I will do my best here.
My name's not Trump. We will give you all the time that you need.
Oh no. You know what? I think I might have to I don't know what, there's something with this computer and Zoom sharing stuff. I sent it to Heather though. Do you mind, Heather? Sorry.
There we go.
I feel super high maintenance here. Sorry about that. Okay, so this was a typical this is sort of the typical West Coast scene this summer in Bamfield, the cougar and the surfboard. Next slide, please. So this was like the busiest summer I've had in the 10 plus years dealing with all of this. So I will try to make it brief, but it was a very busy summer. Next slide, please.
Sorry, I'm trying to figure out how to move it forward.
Oh no.
Hang on a sec.
I think last year I did it by memory.
There.
Couldn't figure it out. Okay, awesome. Thank you. So first I'll just go over the wildlife activity and then the main causes of human-wildlife conflict and go over the outreach efforts that I did and then talk about the main challenges and my focus for next year, or this year actually. Next slide, please. So in terms of bear conflict, there wasn't a lot of bear conflict this year in Bamfield. And overall, there were far less sightings of bears in East and West Bamfield, which was abnormal. The main conflicts that we saw were around campgrounds. The Pachina Bay campground, and at the trailhead there was a sow with 3 cubs that were food conditioned. They originally got into the non-bear resistant bins, and it got progressively worse through the summer. 2 of the cubs ended up getting hit by cars, and I think the sow may have been hit by a car, because I'm not 100% sure if that was her, but it may have been in the fall. Brady's Beach was the other place where we saw bear conflict, and I haven't seen this before. We had a bear get into a camper's tent early on in the season, and it continued to come back. Luckily, it didn't become seriously food conditioned. We had people patrolling the beach every evening, talking to campers and making sure that people put their stuff away. But it was a real challenge because there is no place to put things or secure stuff. There's no signage on the Brady's Beach. And a lot of the people that are coming in are either day use people or people that have never done backwoods camping before. So it's kind of a different scene down there. So it was a big challenge, and definitely something that needs to be looked at. Next slide, please. This was probably the most memorable part of last summer. There was a concerning amount of cougar activity. We had a lot of cougars, frequent daytime sightings, which isn't totally abnormal for sub-adult cougars, because often you'll get sub-adults that are dispersing from their family units, and they'll use the daylight to learn how to hunt. And they'll come into town to hunt things like rats and cats and raccoons. But the strange thing was that we had adults, and we also had a female. Bob Schmidt would know we had a female with small kittens not far from your house. It was on Binnacle, wasn't it? Anyways, there was a lot of conflict there. It was a strange year, and I worked very closely with the conservation officers. And there are a lot of people that hoped that they would come and do something about the cougars. But we're in a situation where they they weren't showing any aggressive behavior other than the daylight hours. They were all still displaying normal behavior, and they're hunting natural prey. Even cats, like house cats, are considered natural prey, unfortunately. And so conservation officers, their role is to deal with individual aggressive animals. But it's like we had a population of cougars there, and they weren't showing any aggression. So we're in this really tricky situation. And the COs basically, I organized a meeting with them, and they basically said, your town is feeding them. There's so many attractants that that's why they're in town. And what's happened is they're no longer afraid of people. Next slide, please. So the two main issues were that we have attractive management problem with the raccoons and the rats from the compost is a big issue there. Fish carcasses in the intertidal, they would just come in and get a free protein meal walking along the shores for people that have thrown their fish carcasses and they've washed back up on the shore. And house cats so those are, I'd say, the top three. We also had issues with chickens, and there weren't a lot of deer from my understanding on the east side. There were on the west side, but I don't think that was the biggest attractant. And the big thing is deterrence. We have to coexist with them, and the coexisting is letting them know that they're not welcome and they need to stay on the outskirts. And so the big messaging that we're trying to put across is to try and scare them. So a lot of people, when they see cougars, they go quiet and they're watching them or taking a picture from inside their house. What people need to start doing is really scaring them off. And so they're individual deterrents like horns and bear spray. Cougars are more averse to pain stimulus. So if you like slingshot them, that's an effective way. But of course, all of this needs to be from a distance. Or if you are walking, to be carrying those with you. There's also the property alarms. So this is a property alarm, and you can set it up where you have where you know that you have a cougar frequenting, and it'll blast noise and flashlights. And the other issue was the other way of deterring them was possibly cougar hounds. The conservation officers weren't able to do that because they only use cougar hounds when it's a lethal effort. But I looked into the town hiring them, and unfortunately, it has to be done during hunting season, which just ended for cougars in February, and that's not when we had the issues. So this has turned out to be like a wider wildlife management issue. And I've been talking to a number of wildlife biologists, and they're all flummoxed. So we're really looking into this and trying to figure out like why they're here, what's going on, and how we can address this. So, but I am concerned about safety. So this is a big issue. Next slide, please. So my outreach efforts were basically education, daily patrols of Brady Beach, cougar awareness and safety, talking to families, handing out brochures on the road all the time, every day, with people with kids running on ahead. The temporary cougar and area signs were up in East and West Bamfield. I was on the cork board trying to track down every sighting and the person who had the sighting to try and determine what their interaction was, what the animal looked like, so we can get an idea of whether we can see any patterns of escalation in their behavior. The problem is that most people in Bamfield don't call the conservation officers, and they can't act unless they have an idea of which individuals are behaving this way. And so I tried to track every animal, but it's really hard if they did need to actually act because there were so many animals. So to be able to identify which animal was behaving, offensively, it was a tricky one. And as I said before, we organized a Zoom meeting with the conservation officer just to talk to the community. I was monitoring public garbage bins, but the ACRD has now provided us new bear-resistant garbage bins. So I'm hoping this summer I won't be doing that, which is awesome. And the cost share program, we had a grant and aid for $7,200, and we helped subsidize the purchase of 27 countertop loamy composters. which is hopefully, I mean, it's a great number for how small the population is. So I'm hoping that'll make a dent in some of the issues around composting. Next slide, please. So in terms of challenges, the main challenges, as always, is attractant management, education, and I'll continue with the cost share program. We're going to have to continue looking into the cougar problem, education, safety, trying to get the community to call the RAP line. And I'm trying to do research into the wider wildlife management issue that's happening. Compost is a big one. I'm going to be doing a survey with the people who purchase the lomies to see how they feel about it, and if it's a good thing to continue to promote. And I'd really like to meet with Jenny Brune and Jody Frank to discuss composting. I know that they're as keen as I am. And campsites. Pachina campsite, this summer, there was a lot of issues around garbage. I know the staff was, very busy. I'd like to work with them to try and get a brochure that's specific to Pachina campsite and to Bearware, so that people can have that upfront when they arrive and they can set expectations for people, and it'll save the staff a lot more time. So that's something I'd really like to work with them with. And Brady's Beach, there's a wider community conversation that needs to happen at Brady's, because it's the way it is right now. It's not a sustainable setup. There, was that under 10 minutes?
Well, well done. Thank you very much, Mandy. Any questions or comments? And I'd like to welcome John Jack, Chair of the ACRD, and Chief Hawayat. Welcome. Any questions, comments for Mandy? Go ahead, John.
Thanks, everyone. I just lost track of time after making dinner for the kids, and my apologies for being late. That being said, just going into the conversations around Pachina Beach, are there things that you would recommend that we look into doing beyond actually like maybe doing the garbage sweeps a bit faster? Is
Yeah,
that part of it? Like,
yeah, definitely. I'd like, because with the expansion, I think one of the things that I know that you guys have put some some smaller bins, and I think what happened, I think they're too small and they overflow really quickly. So I think maybe now that the regional district has proper bear resistant bins, to have some more of those strategically somewhere in other places. And caches for people that are like for hikers in places, but not just hikers. There are people with people that don't have places that to put to store their food and coolers. So actually, I was just talking to Sarah, and she was asking if I could recommend any good bins like that. What I suggested was those the sea cans. You guys, I think you actually have some there for storage. Those are ideal for walk-in places to actually be able to put larger things. Like you could build some sort of locker, I don't know, inside if people were worried about getting stuff stolen. But those are great for storing food. A lot of campsites are now using those because they're more affordable than like the ones that the lockers that campsites that companies promote for campsites are really expensive. So those are good. There's also I got some they're bit like garbage bins for storage. They're at Eileen Scott's, but you can't put a cooler in there. So that the garbage is a big issue. And I also think some signage up around anywhere where there is a garbage or water, so people aren't like dumping food and stuff. I've noticed there's people will wash food and it piles up where the water runs off. And the other thing is a brochure. Like I would be happy to help with a brochure because a lot of these places, if you set expectations and you give them to people when they walk in there, they're much more likely to follow rules, and it's a lot easier on the staff than to have to go and have have conflict with people, which nobody likes to do. So yeah, those would be the main ones for sure. So, but I'm very happy to talk about that.
Thank you. We might invite you to give the same presentation to Huyet.
That'd be great.
Thanks.
Oh, and actually, one more thing I was going to say. The WildSafe BC has a bear campground, BARE campground program, and they have a training that they can give to people that run campsites. So I think it's a nominal amount of money to do it, but it's well worth it. I can give you the contact for that.
Thank you.
Thanks, John. Just before I go to you, Lisa, I'd be remiss if I didn't acknowledge that Christine has joined us a few minutes ago, and because I didn't see your smiling face, Christine, I didn't see you quick enough to say hello. Welcome, welcome, welcome. Thank you for joining us.
Thanks, Bob.
You're more than welcome. Over to you, Lisa.
I just like Mandy. You mentioned slingshots. How has it felt regarding paintball?
It's discouraged because paintball can actually do damage. Like the last thing you want is a blind cougar or cougar running around with an injured eye, or so you want to do minimal amount of harm. And one of the things the conservation officer suggested is taking a pop can and filling it halfway through with small rocks, and it makes noise, and you could fling it at them. It makes noise and it hurts if it hits them. So yeah, but I know I've seen so many videos where people are quietly standing on the inside of the window watching, which I totally get because they're amazing to watch. But we have to do the same thing that we do with bears and chase them off, but safely.
Thank you.
I just have to ask Mandy because I could see myself throwing a pop can with the rocks in it and annoying the critter, and it comes after me. But I assume it would scare them more than it would,
Yeah, well, I mean, it's the kind of if you're having an interaction with a cougar, I mean, unless there's something wrong with it, it would be they're predators, so they don't want to get hurt. So yeah, if you are in a situation and you're walking and you were to see one or if there's one that's standing its ground, it's not like a bear where you can sort of kind of back away. You need to show them that you're the aggressor, but in a safe way. So yeah.
So picking up on your goals for 2025, and that was to meet with ACRD staff. And you and I had an opportunity to have lunch together just recently and talk a little bit about that. Can you elaborate? We have some staff with us this evening. What would you hope to gain from having those conversations? And is it primarily around synergies associated with composting, as an example?
Yeah, I mean, Bamfield's definitely in a position where they are ready to have some sort of compost available. There's been a huge uptick in people with composters. So yeah, I'd really like to just have an opportunity to discuss with them the needs and what I can do on my end to try and support that. I've been talking to so many different people about composting, so I've got a pretty good idea of the climate of how people feel, and I've got some ideas. So I'd like to know what their thoughts are with reducing the green waste, and how I can help in that situation.
I'm wondering if that's something that Hawaiian with Pacina might be interested in talking about, some form of organic waste composition there. I don't know what you go ahead, John, please.
I'm just wondering if Amelia is somehow hearing this. It's something that someone who works in our office has been really pushing for increased activity on Huay's side in regards to these types of things. So I think what I'll do is I'll make sure to bring some of this back once we get more conversation around it and really try to come up with a plan. Because a lot of what Mandy's been talking about, I saw myself when I stayed at Pachina Bay Campground, and not just the campground. If there are things we can do in at least Lower Anakla to help handle some of this, that would be great. Also knowing that there's been quite a few cougar sightings in the past in Upper Anakla, but it seems like it's a different trail, a different like part of what's going on, and so yeah, I think there's some planning that can be or this can influence some of the planning that happens in our community and what we might do with certain types of services. And maybe there are some knock-on effects or at least efficiencies in working together on it. Yeah.
There's definitely a lot of interest. When I was advertising for the Lomies, there was a lot of interest from people in Anakla. I think I had 4 people purchase them from Anakla. So there's definitely an appetite there. There's quite a few people that were interested, but they're not cheap, right? So it ended up being $250 each. So
Well, I'm wondering, I just remember when the ACRD had those new composters displayed in our office, and I think that helped have people purchase them or at least look at them to see what's going on. I think quite a few people ended up buying the tumblers instead, but um, maybe it might be beneficial to have a Lomi for people to look at.
Mhm.
You can see if it's something that would work for them. I don't know. Spitballing, and it feels like it's more of a Hawaiian conversation, but I think that's something that we may want to look at. Thanks.
And great idea. Perhaps if you could get a loaner Lomi to put in the Hawaii offices when folks are coming in, just so they can see it with a bit of information that might be helpful. Heather, I'm just wondering, what would you advise Mandy to do with respect to reaching out to staff?
I can engage with Jenny and Jody and just ask them to reach out to you directly, Mandy. I know that Jenny's going to be joining us shortly here at around 7 o'clock, but she had to be somewhere else, so she missed your presentation, but she's more than happy to engage with you.
That'd be great. Thanks.
And I'll just add in there too that Jody, the same Mandy, she said she was sad and she'd missed your presentation and would be reaching out as well.
Awesome. Thanks.
Can I just ask a question, Bob? I just was curious, how are the Lomies working, Mandy? Are people seeing good results? Are they intended for like a family or just a single person?
No, they're good. They're good. I got one as well because I wanted to try out because I'm selling them. So I have a family of 4 and they're working. And I haven't heard any complaints yet. There are 2 people that haven't received theirs yet because I have to bring them up. But so far, everyone says they seem to like them. So by the end of the summer, I think, or midsummer, I'll do a survey and just get a sense of people's feelings about it. Yeah, but so
Okay.
far I like it. It's kind of
Yeah.
cool. You just end up with soil, which is awesome.
And remind us again, Mandy, you say the cost is $250. But what is the savings to a consumer with the grant?
Yeah, so actually it ended up being $225. That was with shipping and everything. And there were to buy them online, it would have been around $560. So I got a bulk order, so we got a discount there, and then I was able to cover half of it with the GIA. So
Oh, that's great. That's great.
yeah, so
Well,
and they also the sales guy I worked with, they really stand behind their product. So if there are any issues with it, they will take them back and replace them. So I was quite impressed with dealing with Lomi in general.
perfect. Perfect. Well, thank you very much for your time tonight, your presentation, and your interest and passion in making our communities safe and looking after the animals as well as we coexist together. With that, I'm going to move on to item number 7A. I did want to tease John just a little bit by saying, now I know why you were a little bit late, because you didn't want the chair or vice chair's responsibility. Good thinking, good thinking, John. Let's move on to item number 7A, request for decision. And I assume, Heather, you're going to introduce that, are you?
Yes. So as it's the first committee meeting of the year, we just asked the committee to reconfirm their terms of reference. So that's in your agenda package. I'm not recommending any changes to the terms of reference unless anybody sees a need for change. You can just reconfirm your terms of reference for the year.
Thank you. Any comments, questions, thoughts from the committee? Go ahead, Bob Schmidt.
Yeah, thanks, Bob. I was originally going to raise this issue because I see Bob is going to be giving an update on the parking, but I thought this might be an appropriate place to just raise the concern as to what would be the proper forum or committee to be available to discuss issues with respect to not only parking, but Bamfield Main and future maintenance. Acknowledging that this is not necessarily an ACRD problem. The Ministry of Transport's involved, and with respect to Bamfield Main, there's a number of different stakeholders. But certainly this recent freak snowstorm we had a few weeks ago, which resulted in snow staying around for a couple of weeks or so, which certainly I haven't seen since I've been here. But what concerned me was, first of all, a number of people had gone off the road, and so there were concerns about the state of the road, and certainly a freak event like that, I don't think people can have expectations of having the road plowed and sanded immediately or anything like that. But in light of the fact that this lingered for a while, I know we went on the road probably about 10 or 12 days after the initial storm, and there was a great deal of inconsistency in how the road was maintained. When we went on it anyways, probably just before the long weekend, probably about the first 20-25 kilometers from Bamfield had been freshly sanded. It was in good shape. The middle 25-30 kilometers was really winter driving conditions, very icy, not much sand, obviously different topography, so it has a bearing on it. And then the last 25 kilometers or so going into Port Alberni was actually well plowed, lots of sand, and was probably even starting to melt. So my concern is that when something like that happens, despite being a freakish event, I don't know who's responsible, and I don't know if anybody else does. And how do we develop some kind of consistency in the maintenance for dealing with those kind of issues in the future? So whether it's this committee or something like community affairs or a different committee, I think there needs to be a forum for people to raise concerns, get updated on the situation, and perhaps put together a long-term plan. How are we going to manage this in the long term, especially as visitor traffic increases over time? So I just throw that out for discussion.
Thanks, Bob. And I see that John, sorry, I didn't want to take anything away from you, Heather. I see John has a comment as well. Yeah.
That's a great question. So the answer is that it's not straightforward who is responsible, because it's still an industrial road. Even though it's been upgraded, it's still treated as pieces of it are different companies or different interests are responsible for different pieces of it, which is why you see a difference in the quality of different sections. I remember reading some comments that there were some sections near the middle of the whole place that were being plowed more often, and that's because there was activity going on the part of the companies. And so those are conversations that I think need to happen in two different places at the very least. So the first of which is, I think that conversations about the road itself should filter up to the board so that letters can be sent on behalf of Bamfield and the users of the road, with the concerns that citizens and residents and owners of properties in Bamfield would be having. And so we should continue talking about that here or in other areas. that are relevant to the ACRD and let that like filter up so that there's pressure from all sides. There was also something that Hawaiian started that is attended to by the Ministry of Forests and the Ministry of Transportation, and we try to get the Ministry of Indigenous Relations and Reconciliation to be involved with this as well, because they were the ones who came up with a lot of the funding for the upgrade of the road as well. We have invited the companies that are involved, so Solwakin and Mosaic and Huit's operating company. And it's called the Bamfield Road Safety Committee. And really it comes down to a lot of the things that you've brought up already. And so the ACRD has been informed of it going on, and I think it's been attended once by ACRD folks. But I would be open to, yeah, I'm working, buddy. No, it's okay. And it comes down to the just attendance at those meetings. So we're going to be having one soon in April, and it would just be kind of preparatory for before the meetings start or before the activity on the road goes up in June, July. So it would be beneficial if there's more folks involved in some of those conversations, at least to hear what goes on. So Director Beckett, for sure, staff for sure, but I'm fairly certain that if somebody wanted to listen in on what's going on, that could be arranged. Bob Schmidt, if you were personally interested in seeing what's going on there. So I think there's a couple of things that we can achieve there, but I do think that all of the concerns that come up from the community should go through the regional district, through this committee, so that there's just enough pressure and enough record of these concerns, because we're going to need help on in every avenue. We've got to take different angles of attack on this in order to really get it to change. And I think there's a possibility of that happening. So I appreciate the comment. So thanks.
So go ahead, Heather, and then I'll come back because I do have a question for John. And Bob, you still have your hand up. Is there a follow-up question to that as well?
No, thanks.
Okay. Go ahead, Heather.
Thank you. I was just going to say, yeah, this committee is specifically for the Bamfield and area. So if there's concerns that are impacting you as residents, that you should bring them forward to this committee. I recognize that we only meet 4 times a year, so that may not align with the storm event that happened this winter. So I would encourage you to reach out to your director as things are happening. Director Beckett does have the ability to call another meeting just with 48 hours notice, so we can certainly do that. But if that's not available, Bob would take your input and then raise that to the board meeting, in which we hold every 2 weeks. So I just wanted to mention that.
Perfect. Yeah, okay. I think you've given us some clear direction, John, which is helpful with respect to the mechanism and process that will get the information from the community to tonight's committee to the board, and then be part of a lobbying process to attempt to get the support that we're going to need, as we move forward with respect to the road. And I see, Bob, you got your hand back up again, so go ahead, sir.
Yeah, just in light of that, would it be appropriate to amend the terms of reference, particularly 2.1, just to include that in the mandate, parking and road issues, or, Bamfield Main or roads within Bamfield itself? I don't know if we want to go that far, or maybe that's for another meeting to discuss, but it would just put it in the mandate for discussion for this committee.
Heather, it looks like you were going to speak.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
I was just going to say, proposed services is there, so the parking could be a proposed service. So I would leave leave that as it is. I wouldn't include parking. And then the Bamfield Main is not it's not our service, it's not our road, so I'd be hesitant to add it. I think proposed services is sufficient, and this committee is broad enough that you can raise issues that are not a service but require advocacy. So I don't think that we need to amend the terms of reference. I think it's okay as is, knowing that you can bring forward things that aren't listed there.
Okay, that's helpful to know, Heather. Thank you.
Perfect. Thank you very much. If there's no other questions, comments regarding item 7A, if I could have someone move the motion that the Bamfield Area Services Committee reconfirm their terms of reference for 2025 as presented. And I see John Mass move that, seconded by Moira. Thank you very much. All in favor? And opposed? Carried. Thank you very much for that and for that discussion. Item number 7B, Bamfield Community Sewer System Summary. Is that you, Eddie, that's stepping up for that one?
Yes, this one's me, and of course this is just a little a summary of after the referendum vote that took place in the winter of 24, and then just some next steps of staff here. So, of course, as we all know, in November of 24, Bamfield residents voted no to the implementation of a community sewer system by a significant margin, and as such, individual septic systems will remain as the primary method of sewage disposal. And this will be reflected in the soon-to-be-finished Bamfield development plan. Concerns do remain about some properties with systems that are either not operating properly or are direct discharging into the inlet. And while some regional districts do have established local bylaws to regulate on-site sewage systems, the province does have the applicable regulations that do regulate both smaller household systems and larger wastewater systems. The sewage system regulation applies to the household septic systems and authorizes local health authorities to investigate and ensure compliance through use of order fines, and court injunctions. So ACRD staff will continue to rely on the existing provincial regulations. We'll work with ministry staff to ensure existing and new developments meet legislation. This happens regularly as part of the normal building permit review and approval process through the planning department. Just a bit of financial background there on the assent vote. The process was funded through the provincial infrastructure and planning grant, as well as some community works funding. The total cost over 3 years came to $133,000. And there have been no additional staff resources allocated in the 2025 to 2029 financial plan for this process. If the Bamfield Area Services Committee would prefer staff to consider creating a bylaw through the current rural planning service or the establishment, sorry, I misread. Staff could consider creating a bylaw through the current rural planning service or the establishment of a new service if the committee would like to investigate this process. So if the committee would like to deviate from the current process of having the province regulate existing sewage systems. So if there are any questions, happy to answer them.
Thanks, Eddie. I have a question, and welcome, Jenny. You were off mute. Did you want to add something before? Okay, then let me jump into the question. If someone, a Bamfield resident, wanted, whether they were subdividing or they were building a brand new home, whatever, and they were adjacent to the existing Hawaiian sewer line, could they hook up? What would be the process to hook up to that? Because I'm sure that's going to be asked if it hasn't already been asked.
I can answer that question if you like. So great question. I think that right now the process is anyone who is interested has the ability to make an application to the Hawaiian to connect directly. It is a private sewer system and they're able to take connections. That is like outside of the ACRD, and there's many cases where private utilities operate. So there's a setup for that. And I think that there's nothing preventing that. I don't know Eddie, if you're aware of any connections to date of direct connections, but there has been some interested parties in Bamfield who have been pursuing that. I am aware of that.
So just further to that, and again, not to get mired down in bureaucracy and red tape and all the rest of it, but and we'll just use my home. If I wanted to hook up, I know that there's a water line out there. I know that there's fiber optics out there. How does that get coordinated so that we're not damaging existing infrastructure when you have two governance bodies here?
A great question. So when you're doing a service application, usually you do a BC1 call. So you hire a contractor. First of all, you would get an engineering company to do the design work for the connection. If you have to extend the system, like if you happen to be right up to a servicing line, then you can just get a service directly off of that, but you'd still have to do a servicing plan. So what does that look like for your property? Like, where are you going to put it? You also need to make sure, is it in your driveway, adjacent to it? And so you'd have to design that single service from your home. And once you do that, then you're hiring a qualified company or contractor to do that. They would do a BC1 call, which gives them information about all of the things that are in the ground. So then when they're digging, sometimes they'll even send out people who will mark that. So if we got a BC1 call for water, Les would show up and he would mark it in the street like, okay, just don't dig here. Or when you dig here, let me stay here and make sure you don't break that. That's how that works. And we do it all the time. And that's how we technically, sometimes, mostly the time, we don't hit other services.
So one more follow-up, Jenny, for you, because I'm still a little bit confused, is that if it's not an ACRD function, who do you apply to? And I don't like, if Bob Beckett wanted to do that, where would he take out those permits and with whom?
So in the rural areas, that's through the Ministry of Transportation. And so you make your application to them. They do a referral to the regional district and we review it. But fundamentally, they are the approving officer. So when it comes to the regional district, usually it comes with the plan for servicing. And whether if someone's looking to install a septic system, they have to get island health approval and file the permits for that. If they were going to be using the Hawaiian system, they would have a letter of support from Hawaiian saying this is how we're going to be servicing our properties through the community system, and the nation has approved that we will connect to that.
Great, thank you. Anyone else have any questions regarding item 7B?
Hey, Bob. I would just say it's good to have that little report. I wouldn't advocate for adding another service on ACRD's plate. I think there's already the regulatory backup there in place through the provincial system, and so I would just leave it at that.
Thank you. Not bad advice, considering to add a service would add additional costs to our community. So thank you for your thoughts on that. Anyone else have any thoughts or opinions about that? Hearing none, if I could get someone to make the motion that the Bamfield Area Service Committee recommend that the Bernie Claycott Regional District Board of Directors direct staff to continue the practice of referring concerns on the direct discharge or failing septic systems to the appropriate provincial authority for compliance. And moved by Lisa, seconded by Christine. Any additional comments? Hearing none, all in favor? And that passes. And, as the old saying goes, you can never thank people enough. I again want to thank Jenny and her staff for all their work regarding the referendum. Regardless of the outcome, it was truly a good process, and the community spoke, and we respected that. Thank you again for that. Item number 8A, Bamfield Parks Commission. Michael, you've been waiting patiently. I look forward to your presentation.
Hi, everyone. Yeah, I'm just going to provide a quick verbal report on the ongoings of the Bamfield Parks Commission, some of the recent meetings. I have a few things for just information, and then the last one I have is a question for action for this group as well. So kick us off for information. Stop me if you do want to ask a question or jump in for any of these topics as well. So we have lost one member of the Bamfield Parks Commission this year, Jackie. She stepped down, and then also Cheryl is her term as chair there is expiring in this month as well. So we are hoping to do a formal recruitment for more Parks Commission members. And it would be helpful if the community and members of this group here promoted that recruitment. And if there is anybody that they're aware of that would maybe be interested in sitting on that commission, please point them towards it. I think it will be published. The goal is the end of this week, but definitely by next week. And it'll be shared on the Cork board, ACRD website, and social media as well. Next, there's a leak in the Elaine Scott office building. It's caused a bit of damage, but it was repaired. Bathrooms were closed for a bit. It's a recurring issue, so the goal is to figure out a long-term solution to stop that from happening in the wintertime. And also, the public bathrooms were flagged as being in poor condition. Identified the need for some upgrades, but currently we don't have any funding or a design idea. So that's just on our list for something to tackle. Probably won't be this year though. Smiley Rink boards, sadly they were degrading and falling over, so we decided or the commission decided to pull them down and dismantle them. Currently there's just the cement pad there with one basketball net. And I think the idea is that it's currently pretty safe. I haven't seen it since they were all taken down, but the idea is that it's usable, it's safe, it's okay the way it is for now, but the goal would be to create, a better space by either adding more basketball nets, adding boards again. We don't really know what the plan is right now, but we are going to come up with that this year and hopefully action that in the next couple of years. So also, it's suspected that the septic field isn't functioning well. Andrea had taken a look at that since our last meeting there, and she thinks that there's probably a break in the line. So we're gonna add that to the 2025 work plan to fix. There's a discussion with the Memorial Tree Society because there's a bit of work that's required to fix up that infrastructure. So they don't have any funds for those repairs or maintenance of that infrastructure. They're mostly just concerned with the memorial tree and not the benches or the pavilion. So the Parks Commission is going to investigate actions to fix the infrastructure and keep maintaining that going forward. And then also Torrance has agreed to be project manager for the Parks Pavilion project at Elaine Scott Park. So him and Louis are gonna work together in preparing a project plan. And once that's ready, we'll discuss that item again. So also Grappler Wharf. Currently, it's under a 2-year temporary license from the province for the extension of the tenure area. For us or the ACRD to get a 30-year license, we need to do a survey for the area and also an environmental impact assessment. And that's why there'll be a one-time cost increase to requisition this year. The current cost sharing agreement is 2/3 Bamfield Park Services, 1/3 fire. So and I think that has gone through the proposed budget. It's just flagging that here. There's no need for a resolution, but we can discuss that if there's any questions. And then lastly, this is the one for action. So at the last meeting in the fall, the Parks Commission had a motion at the previous meeting regarding Cougar Smith Pass for the Crown Land. No, sorry, not Cougar Smith Pass. Cougars Pass. Crown Land in front of the boardwalk on the west side. There was an application for that Crown Land to be used by a third party. As far as I'm aware, the ACRD never received any correspondence in our planning department. So the commission is under the impression that that was either denied or withdrawn. At the October 1st Parks Commission meeting, a motion was passed by the Parks Commission stating that the ACRD explore adding Cougars Pass Crownland Park parcels into the Bamfield Park service. At this time, or at this meeting after that, with the services committee here, we said that we'd wait until the other application was sent to the ACRD, as it seems that that's not going to come to the ACRD if it is, rejected or withdrawn. The Parks Commission is still interested in pursuing the idea about what that application might look like. So this isn't, formal direction to apply for that Crown Land as park, but it is direction to get staff, myself, to kind of come up with a few options for how the ACRD could apply for including that within the Park Service, and come back to the Parks Commission and this committee with options and the implications, what that might look like. So I'll leave it there. Happy to answer any questions, and I'd hope to get a bit of direction on whether this committee supports exploring that inclusion a bit further.
Thanks very much, Michael. I'm just wondering if we can, just before I acknowledge Christine, if we can make sure that we're kind of in order. Let's perhaps ask questions or comments regarding the earlier part of your submissions with what's going on, and then lastly we'll go to the Cougar Pass Crown Land application actionable items, if that's all right. So Christine, did you want to talk about Cougar Pass, or was it the earlier stuff?
I want to talk about Cougars Pass, but I'll say it's good to receive the report on the other stuff that's happening within Eileen Scott Park, and feels like that's moving in the right direction.
Perfect, thanks. And I will come back to you once we finish the discussion on the other matters. The one question that I have, Michael, with respect to the washrooms, the wall, not the walls, but the Smiley Park boards that were on the side. What opportunities are there for grants? What's the likelihood that we could apply for additional funding for a number of those little projects that you were talking about?
Yeah, I think that there's good opportunity for that type of infrastructure. As you know, we applied for grant funding last year that would have seen some upgrades for the bathrooms. Sadly, we were denied on that one, but I think there's currently lots of opportunity for both, the bathroom upgrades, building upgrades for that for park infrastructure, and then also the sports court type of infrastructure seems to be well supported through grants too. So currently there's no plan for what that infrastructure might look like. So I think that's the first step, and then trying to fit that into a grant application would be something that we'd add to our list.
Thank you. Any other questions regarding those matters before we go to Cougar Pass? Seeing none, then let's jump to Cougar Pass. And Christine, you can have the floor, please.
Thanks, Bob. I certainly would be interested in hearing more about what it could look like for ACRD to bring that Crown Land in so that we know that it's kept for community use. I think it's especially important for places that are currently hosting active community use that are viewed by the community as being community assets. And you know, we'll see what that costs, what that takes, what's all involved. I think through the process that that the Parks Commission has requested, and I'd be in full support of the work to investigate that, and hopefully it'll all work out to keep those community spaces within our use. It's really important in the context of our growing community, and we want to make sure that we have homes and spaces and can invite new neighbors in to the community, but we also want to make sure that we have the things that we need to still function as a good, healthy, connected community. And I think having park spaces available is key to doing that.
Thank you, Christine. John Mass.
Thanks, Bob. The applications, the private application that was in to acquire those 2 lots has been denied by MOT. That's all I had.
Thanks, John. Any other questions or comments? So, sorry, go ahead, Lisa.
I would just second Christine. I would be very much in support of ACRD looking into the process and what it looks like to have that lot of Cougar Pass put into our parks. It's a really key part of our boardwalk and keeping the west side connected from one end to the other.
Thank you, Lisa. Heather, remind me from a governance standpoint, what would we need to provide, Michael with? I'm mixing up the board with the committee. Do we initiate a motion, or is it a recommendation? Help me up with this one, please.
Sure. Michael, where are you at in the stage? Are you looking for a motion from the committee, or are you just looking for feedback?
Yeah, I think a motion would be good, and it's not a motion to direct any funds, or it's essentially just staff time to dedicate my time towards pursuing this. So I think that'd be helpful.
Okay. And the motion would be that the Bamfield Area Services Committee recommend to the ACRD Board of Directors that staff investigate this.
And at that point in time, Heather, there would be discussion about whether or not there would be budgetary impacts. Is that not true?
Correct.
Okay. Right. So, Christine, how does your motion sound? What I was saying is that what Heather said.
Yeah.
Is that good for you, or would you like to repeat that, Heather? And then if Christine is comfortable with that, perhaps you could move that, Christine.
Yeah, I think what Heather said sounds great. I would just add for the research to happen for a report to come back to this committee to make sure that we do hear about it.
Yep.
But otherwise, that sounds good.
And with Lisa supporting, mentioning her support, would you like to second that, Lisa? Perfect. All in favor then? And opposed? Carried. Thank you very much for that. Thank you, Michael, for your presentation and for helping us navigate that process for Cougar Pass. Item number 8B, parking, East Bamfield, and this is a verbal report by myself, and I'm looking for everyone's sage advice. I've been a director about 6.5 years now, and every year the issue of parking is raised. This year, again, it never ceases to amaze me, but there were some additional challenges when Modi removed the rocks along the Bamfield Road down by the four-way stop, allowing individuals to attempt to park, often resulting in vehicles encroaching on the paved section, reducing it to in some cases, one lane. But I don't want to just focus on that particular area or problem. We have parking challenges on the east side, and we've got lots of history. I mean, I remember back when John volunteered to spend time chairing a little working committee to try to find ways to work with Modi to get some parking along the downtown core, the four-way stop. And it was great, but it was only a band-aid, as we can appreciate. Well, now more than ever, and especially with the road improvements, our parking challenges could get worse, regardless of the fact that we've got a couple of folks that have created some commercial parking opportunities. But the nature of the beast is some folks don't really want to pay and would rather still try to find those spots that are resulting in some challenges for us. So I wanted to open up the discussion because one morning I woke up early and lying there in bed thinking, how the heck are we going to handle this? Like, I don't want to go through another year of, oh, that parking on the east side, it's terrible, it's getting worse. How are we going to address this? And I thought, well, who has the responsibility, and how do we come together to holistically find a way to address the issues? And I thought with ACRD planning staff involved, with Modi being involved, with a representative from the Chamber of Commerce, with a representative of Bamfield Road Safety Committee, Bamfield Community Affairs Society, where we create a working group again to come together and come up with some tangible outcomes, recognizing, and this is the tough nut that I want to talk about, is the enforcement, towing bylaw, with appropriate education, communication, and all the rest of it. But the bottom line is some things are going to have to change if we're going to address those problems. So I'm prepared to roll up my sleeves and get involved with the support and help from the community. But some folks are going to have to accept the fact that we're going to have to change some behavior. So let me stop there and let's have some discussion. And I'm sure looking for John Mass to give his sage advice, given his involvement and others. So let me stop there and open up for questions and comments regarding East Side parking.
I thought this might be a quick meeting, Bob. I'd say I'd support the idea of getting a group of folks together to focus on the problem, but I'm curious about ways to bring together all of the things that have already been said. I don't know if they've been, do we have a formal report or even informal report somewhere that lays out what we have already talked about at length throughout the community, so that if a group is brought together, it's not just, it's actually a solution session instead of a problem session, I think would be really key. And I think bringing it together with some of the answers about, there's these perennial problems that are brought forward and the maybe solutions, and then the barriers to those solutions. And I think if all of those can get written down and brought forward to begin with the summary of where do we stand and what is the actual truth and reality around whether we can or can't have bylaw enforcement. We can, here's the jurisdiction, this is what it would cost. I think getting that stuff together is important. Otherwise, we're going to just keep running into the same conversation, and I think it's going to get frustrating and probably not get us where we're trying to go. That's kind of one piece. I think that, you know, it's always good to have a community conversation. I also feel though, like in the short term, one of the things that's key for this summer is that the places where we know folks are parking that are creating like a truly unsafe driving situation, like down at the four-way stop where we had a van parked halfway across the road for weeks that I had to try to not hit with my child in the car daily. Those just need to be blocked off so people cannot use them.
I love it. I see you as being chair of that subcommittee. Christine, really valid. And I just want to tell you that, you know, I have a life too. And the last thing I want to do is have I'm trying to quote you, a community conversation. I'm not interested in that. I'm looking for something that's got some tangible results. And boy, you nailed it with everything you said. Let me jump to John Mass because John Mass had his hand up. And then I'm going to come back to ACRD staff, and I see Jack had his hand up because I'd like to get staff's perspective from a planning, from a usage, and a perspective on that. So here's what we're going to do. We're going to go with John Mass, John Jack, and then ACRD staff, please. And then we'll go to Lisa after ACRD staff. Okay, John Jack.
I think John, sorry, yeah.
I meant John Mass, but sorry, John.
You know, I think probably Bob, if you would, I'll try my camera. I don't know if it's going to work or not, but probably better to get the comments from everybody else first, and then come back to me, because
Okay.
there's going to be quite a few questions, and we've gone this whole route before, and all the information that Christine was talking about, we've already done all that. So yeah, just take everybody else first and then come back. I think that's better.
Perfect. You betcha. Thank you, John. John Jack, please.
Yeah, I think that parking is mostly a combination of economics and planning, like planning department planning. And so what we might want to consider is some sort of alignment for parking that is making sure that it gives the proper priority to residents in the area, and that you're limiting free parking and streaming people towards places where they should be parking, and then hopefully creating infrastructure that will stream those people to walk around the community instead. So they would, like what Pave Paradise or Save Paradise is supposed to be for, but there's no walking path on that side, right? So, like if there was a Tofino-like or a Ucluelet-like walking path that connected that area to that area, you know, hill notwithstanding, that would be probably the ideal way to do it. If the plan is to make Bamfield a destination, then you think about it less in terms of a suburb or a place like where I live, Parksville, where you drive everywhere no matter what it is, and no matter the fact that it's like a block away, you still drive anyway. What you do is you get people out of their cars and you make them walk. And you do that to people who aren't in the neighborhood. You know how like when they close some neighborhoods for some sort of work, they'll go local traffic only, and they'll have like things to stream people away and send them in the right direction. That's the only solution, unless you're going to expropriate someone's property and create more parking in that way. That's not going to happen, right? So it really just comes down to identify places where people can park either privately or publicly, and then just be parking hostile everywhere else, so that people understand that you can't just park wherever you want. You park here and you walk. That's how that works. Because in the busy season, it's going to be more like Tofino or Whistler in the winter, or those kind of things where you want people to park and start walking where they need to go. So maybe the solution is setting aside land for that in various places, and then building the walkways that are necessary, having the conversations that are necessary to allow for biking to happen too if it's slightly too far for some residents, right? So that would be the consideration that I would have. Understanding that, I'm kind of envisioning what it's going to look like 10, 20 years from now. But really it should come down to the parking situation should be something that is either privately dealt with or at least protects the interests of local residents. The only thing I don't know what the solution would be for any businesses that don't have their own parking lots right now. And I don't know how that would look for West Bamfield. I think that would be the first conversation that I would have is how do we set aside parking for those entrepreneurs? And then from there, go from there. But I feel like I'm bridging on sounding like a 15-minute city, you will own nothing person, and I'm not like that, but it's very easy to paint me that way. So I'm going to stop talking now. So thanks.
Thank you. Lisa.
I just had a question regarding one of those potential properties. A number of years ago at a community affairs meeting, it was brought forth that the roadside part of the property below what is now, I believe, Huey Group of Businesses staff housing was supposed to become available to public parking, with potential in the future for them to actually have it fenced and have it as secure, at which point they would start charging. And my understanding from that community affairs meeting was the fact that this parking was going to be about 30 cars big, and it was going to be made accessible to Bamfield in trade or in thanks of receiving the permissions to put in the housing up above. And then the housing above went in, but then the parking never happened. And I'm sure there's all sorts of reasons why that hasn't happened, but I'm kind of curious why it never happened, because it was something that was actually stated publicly that it would. And it's one piece, I'm suspecting that with further development of that property, either they will turn that into a private parking lot that they can charge for, or it will be assumed in the property in another way, so it may not become a permanent fix. But still, if we could have that open next summer to our 30 cars, that would be a huge step in getting a lot of the other vehicles away from our four-way stop and encroaching on the Frigate Road headed towards Centennial Park.
Thanks, Lisa. I don't know if John Jack wanted to respond to that. If you know of anything that might be in the works, I see John Mass has his hand up as well. Let's go with John Jack, and then I'll go with John Mass for that response.
I don't have any answers for that, given I don't know how long ago that was. So it might have just been dropped off the side of a desk because of momentum and focus on other things. So bringing it up again might be a way to do it, and asking a question through Bob, and then he can have a conversation with Patrick would be probably the quickest way to get there. Yeah, I don't know the nature of the deal, and if it isn't inked, then it isn't really a thing. So that's part of it, right? So having that conversation means that if there hasn't been much conversation or action on it, it probably has just kind of been forgotten and could return back to being developed in the right way. But a lot of things are on pause given we're trying to figure out what we're going to do with all our properties. And yeah, parking is definitely a part of it. So, but there can be a give and take there, given how things can develop. Thanks.
Thanks, John Jack. I'll go to John Mass, then I'm going to go to Bob Schmidt.
Yeah, I'll put my APC hat on at this point. When the TPU, the temporary use permit for that property for the staff housing that the Huey have was applied for, part of the application said that they would put part of that for public parking. It was recommended, and they said they would put that for public parking, that lower lot that Lisa was talking about. It never happened. Things changed hands. The CEOs changed. And we did bring it up to the present CEO, but he really wasn't interested in discussing it or going forward with it. So it just has sat. And yeah, it is a good point that that property is there. We even went so far as to figure out how to do the collection for fees, could contract to the staff at the campground, and that could be a shared event because they have to do the other parking lot at the trailer parking lot as well. So that's, it just, yeah, when the CEOs changed hands, there was no further interest in it. And I don't know what's going to happen in that property now. I can't remember where that temporary use permit is. I think it's in its second term, but the property's not being used too much. So it is worth revisiting.
Thanks, John. Bob Schmidt.
Oh, yeah. We could probably talk all night about this. A lot of different layers to this. Agree 100% with Christine that probably the number one priority is eliminating people parking where they shouldn't, where there's a real a safety hazard, such as, around the four-way stop. Then I think there's some fundamental questions that have to be considered. Should people be entitled to park boat trailers along the road? And if not, is there sufficient parking for boat trailers and paid parking? And then probably the third thing is changing people's mindset who have been parking for nothing for a long time, that they either have to pay for parking and there has to be sufficient parking if you're going to start restricting parking. And people will have to get used to walking to their destination rather than parking exactly where they want to go. Like last year, Grappler was just a zoo anytime I went down there. The places people parked, I felt bad for Dylan every time he was trying to put a boat in there. He was weaving around people. And so there's some real challenges. But if we're going to restrict parking, we have to find a means of providing adequate parking for people who will probably have to pay and walk. But there's it's got to be a two-pronged approach. If you're going to eliminate parking in one area, you're going to have to provide it somewhere else. And that's the challenge.
Thanks, Bob. Anybody else have a magic wand? Let me go to ACRD staff and see what your thoughts are.
Bob, you know how to dangle a chewy toy in front of a cat. I love a big, hairy, difficult problem. The reality, though, I think, is unfortunately there is no service for parking. So this is a real tough one for us to really dive into because it's not an easy to solve problem. I think there's a lot of solutions on the table. Perhaps the committee wants to give direction to look at a few things that you could do, and whether you're interested in actually assigning staff to do some work on that, that's possible, and looking at a budget to create a service to provide some support. If you're looking at even just feasibility of having a bylaw for enforcing parking and what that might look like, scoping that, it being March, I don't think that's going to give you any short-term solutions for this summer in reality, just timing wise, but it might help you out for 2026, coming up with a plan. So, I've been hearing a lot of issues from Tofino and their parking challenges, so it will never end, but the sooner you can get in front of it, the better. We don't have anyone from planning here, and I think they have more context and background on that, as well as Ministry of Transportation. But again, I think that, if you want to continue to work on it as a community, that's one thing. Or if you want to look at it from the regional district, even asking us to look for some grant funding to facilitate something. And if it's just focusing tightly on addressing some components of it, that might be easier than, again, trying to solve the bigger component, which might be, something that you deal with through the OCP and development planning and stuff, but just looking at some small short-term measures. That's my thoughts.
So thank you for that. I think we all agree that there are, the four-way stop has to be addressed. And again, I'm looking for your thoughts, Jenny. Surely Ministry of Transportation and Infrastructure could be contacted, brought in, and say, what the hell are we going to do with this? Like this, there is no parking along that side of the road. you've taken out the boulders that got illegally placed there, removed because someone complained about them, and now we're getting more complaints about people parking there, obstructing the road. Like, so whose responsibility is it? And I'm just a simple guy. To me, that's an MOTI issue. They need to come into the community and help find a solution for us. What are your thoughts on that statement?
Yeah, we do meet quarterly with staff, and they're very good and very responsive at Mott. So we can bring that up on a staff level, and then we could also ask them to come and just present at this next committee meeting. Because I think if we do it at a staff level, we might be able to action that a little quicker. I think the next meeting here isn't until May, so we might even have some answers for you for that. I'm thinking, Bob, even if you have some sort of like key items you could email over to me, we can bring that up at our next staff to staff meeting with Mott, and we might be able to just get a response back from them shortly. And if not, worst case, we'll have them come and speak to the parking issues specifically from their perspective for Bamfield at the next meeting.
So thank you for that. I guess there's a number of things that you've brought up from an ACRD standpoint. Do we look to create? Do we go after some grant funding, which would allow us then to do a deep dive into the planning, which would be part of the OCP and all of that kind of stuff. And I didn't capture it all as I was writing it down, but I'm wondering if this is something that you could bring back to our next committee meeting to say, staff have given this some more thought, and here are the options moving forward. Not to dismiss what we've just talked about. Me responding back to staff to say, would you please get hold of Madi? These are some critical issues that we'd like to try to get addressed ASAP.
How about this resolution that the Bamfield Services Committee recommend that the Board of Directors direct staff to look at some options for Bamfield for addressing parking in the short and long term, and different funding options, just at a high level, just some basic options, and even to bring that back just to this committee for your consideration. So including bylaw, like just establishing parking bylaw. And I'm not even like, they probably won't even be able to dig into the details of that, but just say, if you want, we could do this. And this is what the scoping would look like. Because logistically, do we have to establish a service? Because there might be just some governmental restraints around the options. So I think we can probably do that for you for the next meeting.
Good, thank you. I've got John Jack, please.
Yeah, I would definitely want to hear from planning on some of their thoughts about how this can be incorporated into the Bamfield OCP as well. Not that I have a say in the OCP, but like you would want to hear their thoughts on what the planning opportunities would be, if only to like start streaming people as visitors grow and as residents grow, figuring out what you're going to look at when it comes to parking. And mandating minimum parking, but also mandating potentially maximum parking depending on how much infrastructure and space you need for the alternatives to driving everywhere. And that's going to be a tough conversation because of the rural nature of our community, but it's going to be an issue, especially when you start thinking on the limited amount of space there is on the peninsula area. So looking at different areas and what that may look like is going to probably mitigate a lot of problems if we just let it happen organically. The only other thing I would say is that I'm pretty sure that in order to make any decisions that will have force, we're going to have to look at a service. And that could be something that we should start thinking on what the communication is going to look like, just because of how people will react to any service being created. Just from a what are we able to do perspective, there aren't a lot of tools right now, and unless there's a service, there probably won't be. that's just from my perspective at that point, though. So I'll take that as you will. Thanks.
Thanks, John. I'm going to go to Christine and then to John Mass. Christine, please.
Thanks, Bob. I think that proposed motion sounds like it's moving in the right direction. Some pieces that I think could be embedded in there as well is with the increased traffic to town, not all of those people need to drive to Bamfield at all. And some of the solution in here is that people drive, that I see as a potential opportunity, is people drive to Port Alberni, park somewhere, so we still get to have a conversation together, and that we move more folks into shuttles and services that are bringing people out, because a lot of what creates the parking issues in town are both and threats and right.
Christine, you were a little bit broken. Can you just summarize your last couple sentences, please?
She's gone. She
That's
probably accidentally connected to Wi-Fi as she was driving by or something like that, and I can screw up your connection. So
anyway, let's go to John Mass.
So I've made some notes on the discussion so far, and I thought I should stop it because it will go on all night if we don't. And we've done this so many times. So I've just I've numbered them, and I'm just going to go through them. They're not quite in the order that they came out, but I put them in my quick order of importance. So first one is enforcement. There is no enforcement. And I'm not an expert here, but I have done an awful lot of work, both with the ACRD and with MOT, when we put all this together and we had everybody on site and discussed all the options previously. The fact that we can't do enforcement is because it is MOT right of way. And so we can't use it to collect money. And the enforcement, we can do a little bit of enforcement. We can apply for applications to use an area, say down by the dock, to say this is a loading zone only, and they will permit us to have that, and we can enforce it and put up signs, etc. We cannot collect any money for anything we do on the MOT right of way. So when we had the plan before, we put it all together. It was very good. We even got to the point of looking at the costs for the auto parking meters, so that we could do all the collection. And it looked like it was going to go very well. We figured out a way that we could pay for the additional expansion of the parking along the roads, but it had to be paid for. And there was definitely pushback, and there always will be, about paid parking. But we cannot collect money for the parking that is on the roadway. So anything that's on MOT, we cannot do that. A service could be committed, service could be developed, but that service cannot be done by the ACRD, according to MOT at that time, because we're not a municipality. We have to be a municipality. So I don't know if you have anything to speak to on that, Jenny. Just make a note and come back later. But the MOT did suggest that there's a possibility of working with the Huu-ay-aht government, because the Huu-ay-aht government is closer to a municipality than we are by a long shot. So that was a possibility that we could go that route. So that kind of takes care of payment, and the enforcement. It will take a lot of behavior modification, just like when we started charging on the docks and people said, we've never paid before and we're not going to pay, etc. And on the docks, it's a little different because there's nowhere else to go. In Bamfield, there is 7 parking lots that do charge for there's 6 parking lots that do charge for parking. And then there is the other option of the Huey one that Lisa was talking about along, I guess it's Frigate Road. So that, or Grappler Road, perhaps. So there is plenty of parking there. The one lot, Save Paradise, they have provided a shuttle to the docks. So it's a free shuttle included with your parking. And they will shuttle you down, shuttle you back, not all day long, but once when you get there and once when you want to leave to pick up your car. And it is a pretty good lot, and there's cameras and fence, park fence. And some people have been using that. I know the spill off from the Centennial Park trailer park, when it gets full and people want secure parking, they have gone there and parked their trailers in their lot, and they're getting more and more. And Centennial Park's been working with them to help that as an overflow. A big part is that people don't want to walk more than a block at most. If everybody could, they would park right on the dock, and people do and leave their car there. And that's the issue. There is room for a couple hundred cars to park safely street side in East Bamfield, but it would mean having to walk, and people don't want, they just refuse. Like up Nuthatch Road, up by the school, the new community hall will have a big parking lot that we had talked about in the original stages of that being built, that could be paid parking in the summer as well, because when it's not being used for functions, and it mostly isn't in the summer. So where have I got to here? It is not the mandate of MOT to develop parking. There's transportation strictly. We can apply for permits to use the roadway because it is provincial, but we cannot charge for it. I explained that. And they did, when we did the project before, the first project, and we're going on with the second project, we had to get money from outside because we couldn't recollect it. We did grant and aid money, and it comes out to around $1,000 a parking spot when we're doing that, developing alongside the road like that. So not being able to collect any money for those spots, it became quite obvious that we're, spending $10,000 to $20,000 at a time wasn't really solving much of a problem. And we stopped. It did move cars farther up the roadway, that's all. So we can go back to that. And it's easy to do. MOT will work with anything on us to do that. They even supplied culverts and no-go concrete barriers, things like that. They'll supply material to us to help facilitate it. They'll bend over backwards, but they can't let us collect money the way it is. So even if we do create a service, then we have to figure out a way to be able to collect money for this. So I don't know about enforcement. The community put up a number of signs that say no parking. That wasn't anything legal, just like the Coast Guard puts up their private parking signs and the fire department puts up their private parking signs, and they've expanded from one spot now to 5 or 6 spots, and they just keep putting up more signs. And those are people, especially with Coast Guard, they come and park for a week at a time when they're coming into the school, and but they have to park right at the end of the dock, right? There would be a perfect example to park in Save Paradise and take the shuttle down, or one of the trucks shuttle them down, and the truck sits there all week long. And it's the same with the number of tourists. Now, John, you talked about parking in West Side development, et cetera. So it was introduced through planning that we would enforce or demand anyone doing development on the west side having to have secured parking on the east side. Unfortunately, we did this after the Bamfield Inn was built, which I don't know how many people they can hold, but it's a lot. And so that they have no parking on the east side at all. And I don't know if we can go back and do that. Let me just check. Yeah, so I think that's all my comments regarding the discussion so far. If anyone has questions, maybe I've got answers.
Thanks, John. Christine started off the conversation by saying, oh my gosh, this could be a long night, and so I am cognizant of the time, and we do have an in-camera item for discussion as well. I guess what I'm looking for is what would you like your chair / director to do regarding this issue at this point in time? Give me some guidance or advice. Jenny, you did have a resolution that you proposed. Could you read that out one more time, please?
There was two. One of them is we could ask Moti to come to the next meeting and do a delegation to talk about Bamfield parking issues if you would like. And the second one is that you could make a resolution to have staff put together an options report, which John Mass has just read aloud. Thank you, John, for us. But I jest a little bit. You have an amazing background, John, and we really appreciate that. But staff could do a highlight version of what the options are in written form, meaning services and those things, and do that in summary to see if the committee would like to do more.
Go ahead, John. Did you want to respond?
No, I have no response to that, but I just did note that I missed one item. The people that have Save Paradise, at one point they did have a tow truck in town and a service truck, a flat deck, and they also offered to provide the cost of putting the no parking signs in, printing the signs, building signs, buying the signs, all that, and installing them in town to help with the community. So that's just one thing. That's all I have. Thank you.
Just note, Christine is back online, and Moira had to duck out for a short meeting. Is there anyone prepared to move those two resolutions so that we can move on to the in-camera? John, you're moving that, seconded by Lisa. Is that for both resolutions? Again, not to be too formal. I could do that for one at a time, but I'm sensing we're good with both of them. All in favor then, moving forward with those two resolutions? Welcome back, Moira. Thank you for that. It's passed. Thank you for everyone's input, and Jenny for your advice on that. With that, I'm going to let me get back to my agenda, please. I need a motion that the Bamfield Area Services Committee receives reports A and B. So motion by Bob, seconded by Lisa. All in favor? Motion passed. Thank you very much. Heather, do we have any late business? No. And any questions from the public?
No, there's no emails received and there's no Q&As in Zoom.
Okay, and did we send something out to the committee? I think we did, regarding the in-camera. So
yeah, so Bob, if I can just get you to read the reasons to go in camera, and then I'll stop the live stream.
Perfect. Motion to close the meetings to the public as per the community charter sections I-91A, personal information about identifiable individual who holds or is being considered for a position as an officer, employee, or agent of the regional district or another position appointed by the regional district.
So moved.
So moved, seconded by